So you're welcome to ask questions anytime during the presentation. You can turn your microphone on and ask me. You can also do a chat, but I can't see the chats. At least I haven't figured out how to see the chats. When I put a presentation up, it covers my whole screen. So either way.
I'll manage the chat for you, Dr. McAvoy.
Okay, just, yeah, if somebody has a question at any point, just let me know. So again, this is the environmental engineering. I'm going to give you an overview, hopefully some information that will help you make a decision on your future academic career. My name is Drew McAvoy. I'm a professor educator in the environmental engineering program at UC, the main campus. So just to let you know who our management team is, again, I am the undergraduate program director. So if you're going to be requesting any courses, substitutions, or any of those things, transferring courses, I'm the one that has final approval of that. So again, we've worked on our curriculum. I guess most of you are probably going to be 26 grads or later. So we've just made some changes to the curriculum. There's actually 3 new classes that you'll need to be taking, and we've dropped some. So again, if you're just coming in and you're going to be looking at 2026 or later graduation, you want to make sure that you get the current course schedule. Dr. Margaret Kupferle is our program director, so she leads the environmental engineering program, and David Wendell's our graduate program director. So it's probably a ways off for most of you to think about, but if you go on to graduate school, then you would be dealing with Dr. Wendell. Academic advisors and co-op advisors. These are very important people. Caitlin, Vicki, and Linda are the academic advisors. Vicki, she's actually on the call today. So if there's any questions specifically for academic advising, she's here to answer those questions. So these are 3 very important people that you need to get to know if you come into environmental engineering. And Beth Hansen is our co-op advisor. So all students go on 5 semesters of co-op. So Dr. Hansen is also a very important person to get to know in your academic career. Environmental engineering, it's relatively new program at UC. It was established in 2012. Prior to that, it was part of civil engineering. So environmental broke off of civil and we joined up with chemical. So we're actually in the chemical and environmental engineering department. And I'll get into a little bit more the difference between civil and environmental engineering. So you probably have some questions about that. This picture here, this is one of the one of the Capstone projects that we had a couple of years ago, and it was with, I don't know if you've ever been to the aquarium, the Newport Aquarium across the river, but it was a project with the Newport Aquarium, and if you can read the title, it says phosphate treatment and removal from drinking water. And the impetus of this project was that the Northern Kentucky Water District adds phosphate to their water supply to control corrosion, particularly in old lead pipes and iron pipes. So iron you probably haven't heard so much about, but lead definitely has been in the news lately, contamination. So they add phosphate to control the contaminant, control solubilization of the lead pipes. The project here was really to look at removing phosphate because the aquarium would like to have some coral reefs in their exhibit that is sensitive to phosphate. So this is a project where the students came and evaluated the situation and came up with a treatment technology, ion exchange, to remove phosphate from the drinking water supply that supplies the aquarium. So again, just an example of the type of things that you would get involved with Capstone. Okay, environmental engineers. So you will be in your academic career learning about engineering, soil science, biology, and chemistry. These are all disciplines that you need when you're going to be solving environmental problems. And that's what environmental engineers do. They're really problem solvers and trying to come up with solutions for environmental contamination. What's the type of work? Well, you may get involved with recycling, waste disposal, water resources. So that's actually a hot topic right now with climate change. So, there's droughts and there's too much water, flooding. So we have professors that work in that area as well. Public health, of course. So we're trying to protect the public and then a lot of, at least what our faculty do here at UC, is water and air pollution control. So there's lots of jobs out there in that area. Also, you could get involved with global issues, so unsafe drinking water, maybe in Africa. Again, I mentioned climate change. There's going to be a lot of jobs in the future related to climate change, and then just overall environmental sustainability. So as the population grows on the planet, we really need to think about sustainable solutions to a lot of the problems that we face. So work environment, you're probably wondering, what do environmental engineers do? What's kind of the setting? And I would say most are probably going to be working in an office environment, and they'll be working with other engineers. So, for example, if you are in a consulting firm and you're designing a water or a wastewater treatment plant, you may be involved with electrical engineers because you got to get power to the pumps, mechanical devices, treatment, moving water around. You may be working with mechanical engineers as well because they know a lot about pumps and fans and that kind of thing. So you may be even working with civil engineers because you're going to be designing some structure. So maybe you need a structural engineer to be part of your team. So you no matter what you're going to do, you're probably going to work with a variety of different engineers. Urban planners too. So if you're, let's say you're looking at recycling and want to establish a facility to do that, then you'd have to work with urban planners on where to site it and those kind of things. So again, most of these kind of jobs, you're in the office. But if you're really an outside person, there are, construction projects. So if you're more into the construction side of it, there's jobs there as well. So you could be on the site during construction. And there's also jobs that are more monitoring, I guess I will say. So if you're interested in understanding fate and transport of contaminants in the environment, that would get you outdoors and out of the office. So there's really just a variety depending on what your interests are. So just a few numbers. So you're probably wondering about employment. So these numbers are a little bit old. I mean, 2018, not that long ago. But there's, 55,000 jobs out there, environmental engineers. So there's quite a few jobs. Median pay, 87,000 per year. So not bad. Entry level, and I know this is a pretty good number. Graduates last spring, mid-60s was kind of the average, I'd say, starting pay coming out with a bachelor's degree. So again, not too bad in terms of salary. Job outlook, we have a lot of environmental issues, so expect it to continue to grow over the next 5 to 10 years. So in terms of class size, if you look at our current class, it's going to graduate this spring. We have 26 students. So keep in mind, we just started the program in 2012. So this is I think it's our fourth or fifth graduating class. And the 2025, so the first year students that came in this past fall, 38 students. So you see there's a little bit of growth. And we would hope to, get up to, 50 or maybe 60 students down the road at some point. What do environmental engineering grads need, in terms of degrees? Well, most of the jobs really are bachelor's, so a BS degree. If you're interested in getting more in-depth into a particular aspect of environmental engineering, then, getting a master's degree is always a nice thing to do. So you can get, more involved in a particular topic. So maybe it's, drinking water treatment, so you can focus more on that. PhDs, I mean, again, you're probably not thinking about graduate school, but if you're into research, then you may be interested in going on and getting a PhD and doing some research. All these jobs, even the PhDs and myself, eventually are going to require a professional engineering license, a PE license, and particularly just the BS, the bachelor's degrees, more so than the PhDs. But I do have a PE license as well. Okay, UC, so environmental engineering. We currently have 11 faculty, and we're actually looking to hire at least one and maybe two more faculty. So we have a good amount of faculty to teach courses. Our faculty is really engaged in a lot of cutting edge research, water resources, energy, waste reuse, water treatment, wastewater treatment, nanotechnology. So again, nanotechnology, using that to actually remove contaminants from water and air. Energy, I would say, at least in our program, energy is more bioenergy. So it's converting organic matter, organic waste into either biogas or biogasification or liquefaction. So turning organic matter into an energy source. So there's those type of research activities going on here at UC. Because the class sizes are relatively small, definitely compared to all the other disciplines of engineering at UC, there's really a close faculty-student interaction. So you'll get to know the faculty pretty well by the time you graduate. Okay, so it looks like I've got something in the way here. Let's see if I can get it moved. There we go, that'd be better. So what are you going to study? Well, I assume most of you are probably first year students now. So you're taking math, computer programming, physics, general chemistry. Maybe you haven't got into organic chemistry or biology yet, but these are the basic courses that you generally take in your first and second year. And then at the upper level, you get into more applied courses, maybe learning how to do chemical analysis. Material and energy balance is useful when you get into designing reactors, as well as heat and mass transfer. So these are courses that you would be taking. Fluid mechanics and hydraulic systems designs. Any system that an environmental engineer will be working with, you've got to be moving either water or air in it. So you need a good basic understanding of the fluid mechanics, chemical reaction engineering. So again, if you're looking at removal of chemicals or contaminants from water or air, very useful course. You'll get exposure to water and wastewater treatment, air pollution control, and just water resources analysis in general. So again, this kind of gives you a kind of an overview of the type of courses you would be studying at UC. So if you haven't already, I suggest that you go to our website, Environmental Engineering, and you know, it's got a lot of useful information. So there's a web link here that you can get to it, but I'm sure if you just Google environmental engineering, you see you can eventually get to this page. So get a lot of useful information. So if you still have questions, I recommend that you go to this site. Okay, just history of environmental engineering in Cincinnati. We really have a long history. It's the birthplace of environmental engineering in the US. We were the first program to have a graduate, an MS, and a PhD degree. Within Cincinnati itself was the first to have smoke abatement, an office here. First to have develop a model for pollution transport in the Ohio River, and that goes back to 1925. Our program's fairly strong. It's in the top 40 in U.S. News and World Report. And again, I mentioned that we initiated environmental engineering on a bachelor's degree in 2012. And that's a lot because of the growing market and the needs that there are in this field. We are ABET accredited, so that's one thing that's important if you want to go on and get your professional engineering license. The first step is to go through the fundamental engineering exam, the FE exam, and there you need to have an accreditation, ABET accreditation. So we fulfill that. Just a little bit on student organizations. You know, there's hundreds of student organizations at UC, but I'm just going to focus on three that are really in engineering that a lot of the environmental engineering students get involved with. And the first one here is the Society of Environmental Engineers. It's not restricted just to environmental engineers, so really anybody on campus can join. Their main focus is really community activism. They volunteer a lot for different things. And one of the main thing is the Mill Creek Alliance. So they do water sampling on the Mill Creek, which kind of cuts right through the center of Cincinnati. Engineers Without Borders. So this organization, again, is not restricted just to environmental engineers. And there's a lot of students outside of engineering actually that get involved. Though I would say environmental engineers are probably the largest group that's in this organization. And here you get involved with global projects. And our particular chapter here at Cincinnati has 3 sites in Tanzania. So there's opportunity to actually go over to Africa, and they've installed drinking water distribution systems. They've installed latrine systems in these villages. Unfortunately, with COVID, there hasn't been any travel in the last year, but hopefully that's going to change here over the next year, and the students can start traveling back to Africa. So again, if that's something you're interested in, you know, you can join up with Engineer Without Borders. The third one is the tribunal. So this is really the student government, the engineering student government. again, it's volunteer activities, social activities that you can get involved with. So again, if you're more interested on policy and government kind of things, this might be something you want to get involved with. Okay, just a little cartoon here. You know, if you think about other parts of the world, and particularly in the sub-Saharan Africa, you know, they have water shortages and medicine shortages, and we really don't have those particular issues, you know, here in the U.S. So we're focused more on like minute amounts of pharmaceuticals in our water supply. But still, that could be important, you know, contaminants. And again, that's, you know, what environmental engineers would be doing here in the U.S. is coming up with ways to remove these contaminants from water. Okay, just some pictures. You know, the students. So in the upper left is a student group that you know, went to a wastewater treatment plant. And you'll go on quite a few of these, you know, through your coursework. A lot of the classes, you know, will take you out to wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant, you know, maybe Duke Energy, a power plant, those kind of things. So you get a lot of opportunity for firsthand exposure. The lower left is a bioreactor. So this was an experiment actually I was involved with, looking at biodegradation of pharmaceuticals and wastewater. So if your interest is more on the research side, maybe you do your co-op in research and you'll be in the laboratory. The upper right-hand side is related more to air pollution. So it's an air monitoring. So again, can get you outside in those situations. And then in the lower right-hand side is indoor. So looking at indoor pollutant and measurement. So just, you know, give you a variety of things that you may be involved with. So questions come up. Where do environmental engineering students co-op? Well, they co-op really almost anywhere. These are kind of the main ones. So GE here in town, the aviation, take on a lot of co-op students. The Metropolitan Sewer District does, as well as the Cincinnati Waterworks. Kroger and Duke also take on a lot of students. And UC, I mentioned, if you want to do research, you can get in the lab and work with some of our faculty. So this is just a few. I know it seems like every year students actually go international. So that's an opportunity as well, particularly if you get with a larger company that's international, like Procter & Gamble. You know, they may have opportunities that you could go to Germany, for example, or Japan, and do your co-op. I know last year we had a gal that went to Japan. Actually, it was more research. It was working with a professor doing some research. So again, don't limit yourself to Cincinnati. So you could get co-op jobs anywhere in the U.S. and anywhere internationally as well. So when you graduate, where do our alums work? So a lot go into consulting. So bar engineering, Buhan, environmental services, civil environmental consultants. So these are all like consulting firms. So that's really, I would say at least half of our students go into consulting. You know, industry is another area. So Dow Chemical, Duke, Honda, they all take on Procter & Gamble here. Now that's actually, I worked for them for over 20 years. Take on environmental engineers, Kroger, of course. You wouldn't think it, but you know, Kroger, they do a lot of work on energy, and they do a lot of work on like biogas generation. If you think about Kroger, there's a lot of food waste. So converting that food waste into energy So there's a lot of jobs even with Kroger. So places you wouldn't even think of hiring environmental engineers. Greenhouse systems. So there's a company here in Cincinnati that actually design and build greenhouses for food production. And these could be housed anywhere in the U.S. They've got a pretty big business. Solar, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, so more hydrology type jobs. So there's just a variety out there. Capstones. So we get a lot of questions about capstone. So I'll just briefly give you some more examples. I gave you one on the aquarium, the Newport Aquarium already. But this year we have a really neat project that's with Northern Kentucky Water District and Duke Energy. And Northern Kentucky Water, they pump their source water out of the Ohio River, and they have these reservoirs where they store water. So they got about a 1-day capacity of storage. Well, their issue is that they get algal growth in these reservoirs, and then they have to do additional treatment. So their idea was, what if we put solar panels on top of the reservoir, and it will shade the reservoir to reduce the amount of algae being grown, and then at the same time generate energy that they can use on site for their treatment process. So again, the Capstone team is doing and digging in and figuring out how to design these floatable solar panels onto a reservoir. Cincinnati Zoo, this was last year's project. So they were involved with designing stormwater capture and treatment. So here, sewer pipe, you capture the stormwater, you route it to a storage, then you treat it and you reuse it on site. And Cincinnati Zoo, their goal for 2025 is to be zero water. So they want to capture all the water that falls on the zoo and reuse it on site. So that was a neat project. Lake Lorelei. So this was a project several years ago now. And this is a gated community about 60 miles east of Cincinnati. So it's all these homes that live on this lake. Well, it's a dammed river, but in Ohio, we call that a lake. But they were having algal bloom issues. And so they wanted the student team to come in and look at how could we best control nutrients. So the student team worked on it and had some buffer zones for the ag runoff, and then they designed a wetland treatment system. So when the runoff comes in, it gets treated before discharged into this lake. So again, just giving you a variety of different capstone projects that you could get involved with. Transition. So this is probably, you're all here thinking about transitioning to main campus and hopefully environmental engineering. So the application deadline for summer is coming up soon, March 1st. So again, if you're interested in starting in the summer, you don't have to start in summer, but you can still apply to get going even for the fall semester. GPA. So your overall GPA needs to be 3.0 or greater. And then in your math and science classes, so calculus, chemistry, and so forth, 2.75. Okay, and I've got a website here. So one thing you could do is go out on this a change of major and transition. It's a Canvas page. And that can give you a lot more information. And the academic advisors, I strongly encourage you to reach out to the academic advisors because they're there to help you. Okay, some summary thoughts. Environmental engineers versus environmental scientists. Get these kind of questions. Should I go environmental science or should I go environmental engineering? And I would say the difference between the two is that engineering, you're going to learn, and probably your job is going to be more in pollution control. where as an environmental scientist is probably going to be more involved with investigating and trying to understand pollution as it occurs. So out in the river or in the air. So again, difference being designing systems that can control pollution to get out into the environment versus actually going and studying the impacts that would be on the environment. But that's not to say environmental engineers couldn't do the latter. Basically, my career has been looking at contaminant, fate, and transport in the environment. So you could do both. So that's advantage environmental engineering. You could do environmental science work as well as environmental engineering. The other question that comes up is difference between environmental engineering and civil engineering. Environmental engineering, at least at UC, broke off as civil in 2012. So the focus, at least at UC right now, is if you're interested in environmental issues, now you've got a pathway where you can just focus on environmental engineering. And because of the split, civil engineering now focuses more on structures. They call it vertical and horizontal. So horizontal would be bridge design, road design, so any structure that's kind of horizontal in nature. And then the vertical would be buildings. So building, structures, you need structural engineers. And civil now actually has an architectural engineering. So again, indicating that their focus is more on structures, whereas environmental engineering is, as I've mentioned, it's more focused on environmental control of pollutants. There's a lot of diverse opportunities, as I've mentioned, and the pay isn't bad as well. So that is my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to open it up to any questions that you may have. So was there a chat? Did I see a chat?
No questions in the chat so far, but I think we can definitely talk through some of the questions that we had for those who had some questions on the registration. So one of them is, what are the semesters for co-ops, and do they have to be related to environmental engineering? So your co-op semesters are determined by your curriculum and where you stand. So when you are accepted and you meet with either Linda, Caitlin, or I to go over your transition, we'll walk you through which semesters you will be co-oping and when you'll be starting your co-op semesters. And most of our students do tend to do environmental related work on co-ops. But it's just a matter of what makes the most sense for you and what you're most interested in doing. Some might lean a little bit more toward the civil side of things. Some might lean a little bit more toward the chemical side of things. It's really more of what you are interested in and what you apply for as well for those co-op positions. Let's see, it's another, yeah, so the co-ops and academic calendars, I linked to the curriculum. I put that link in for you guys in the chat. So definitely take a look at it, and it maps out when you will be on your co-op semesters there. And definitely the jobs and opportunities, there's a lot of them out there. So those are just a random sampling of where some of our students have been on co-op over the last few years, as well as where some of our alumni are, but it's definitely not an exhaustive list for either of them. There's a lot of good opportunities for you out there. And then some more about the requirements. I linked into the transition page, so you can take a look at that, and the Canvas page. Definitely use those resources to help you out. You can apply really as many times as you need in order to be admitted. If you aren't admitted on your first try, you can definitely reapply for a later semester, and that's totally fine. One of the reasons that we kind of recommend to apply for summer admission, even if you aren't planning on any summer classes, is it's more time for you to connect with us as your advisor to get you on the right path for the fall. So the admission piece, You are admitted at the end of the spring semester before the summer semester begins. We have a few months to connect and can make sure we answer all your questions, and then you start classes in the fall semester. But if you aren't quite at the 24 credit hours, or you're going to be a little bit low on that GPA and you want to wait and just apply for fall admission after taking maybe a class or two in the summer, totally an option as well. You've got lots of choices in terms of when you want to apply and what makes sense for you. So be connecting with your current academic advisor. We have a special offering for you to be able to meet with Linda, Caitlin, or I in environmental over these next couple of weeks if you want to meet with us. And then we also have our transition advisor, Corinne Cook, and you can meet with her at any time. So lots of opportunities to ask your questions and try to get a little bit more clarification about what makes the most sense for you. Good question about whether you can minor in environmental engineering while you, so can you minor in environmental studies with a major in environmental engineering? Yes, we definitely have students who have an environmental studies minor with the environmental engineering curriculum. Good question. Other questions in the chat? Any other questions that we didn't get to from the registration that you would like answered as well as students?
I was meaning to ask, what's like a typical day like for an environmental engineer? Like if you're in the field, I guess, is it like a 9 to 5 structure?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Most jobs you'll be working, in an office situation. It depends on what the job is. Consulting, kind of runs hot and cold. So there may be times where you're working 60-hour weeks, and then times when it's slow, maybe you're only working 30-hour weeks. But in general, it would probably be 9 to 5 kind of office hours. Are there any jobs outside? Well, again, if you're interested in more of the construction side, of treatment, I mean, those would be outside jobs. If you're interested in, maybe, monitoring or investigating contaminants in the environment, that could get you outside as well. So yeah, there are some jobs that would be more focused on being outdoors.
Oh, just a comment too. I'm Margaret Kupferle. I'm program chair. Also, I'd say it can go in phases. If you're doing consulting, there are times when you're completely out in the field and other times when you'll be back to the office. And again, depending on the company, that if they know you like being out in the field, you may be able to tweak your schedule to be the person they send out when they're doing that kind of work. It's pretty variable. I'd say we have a broad spectrum of things you could end up doing.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are there any like certificate programs kind of linked into engineering or anything like that?
You mean if you were getting a degree outside of engineering?
Well, if you're
Or-
trying, yeah, well, yes, yes.
So let's say if you were doing environmental studies, and is there a certificate for environmental engineering?
Yes.
Well, we do have minors. I don't know, Vicky, what?
Not really. We don't necessarily have a ton of certificates, either at the grad or undergrad level. We do tend to just lean more towards minors, or full-on master's degrees. And maybe, Dr. McAvoy, talk a little bit more about like master's degrees with other majors, and kind of what that might look like in terms of certificate, and being able to do some of that work.
Okay, thank you.
But there are, minors, you can get minors, but that would require you probably taking several more courses in environmental engineering.
Yeah, the minors require 6 classes, and they're all engineering classes. 3 of them are usually ones that you would take whatever your engineering major is, that you would take anyway, and then 3 have to come from our program. But they are full-on engineering for those minors, the way it stands right now. So. Drew, do you want to talk about the master's degree though, with both science undergrad and engineering undergrad?
Which, I'm not sure what you're talking about. The
So
master, like MEng or?
no, well, you could talk about that too, but we admit students into our master's program with a
Oh.
thesis from a variety of backgrounds, both. They have to be, well, not necessarily. It would depend on the advisor and what work they're doing, but usually it's from A&S somewhere, a science kind of background. But we've had some people with like environmental policy or something, so it's possible it could be slightly different. But we would admit into our master's level, and then you would come out with a master's degree in environmental. So that's a
Yes,
possibility too.
so if you had a bachelor's degree in chemistry or biology, that's typically, those students would come in
I
as
would
as
love to hop in on this. My name's Corinne Cook. I'll work with any FEP or change of college student. And this is a conversation I actually have with our transition students a lot, especially those of you who might have a lot of credit, might have concerns about doing a 5-year engineering undergraduate degree, but could see yourself getting a degree in chemistry, physics, biology, even a non-STEM one. We've had students ask questions like, can I take prereqs to be into that program? So if you think you might fall into that category, you can come talk to me, come talk to Vicki, and we would love to connect you when you're farther along that pathway with our graduate office so they can kind of sit down and tell you exactly what that timeline would look like for you. Thank you for bringing that up. That was an awesome recommendation.
Thanks, Corinne. Appreciate your input on that one for sure.
Any last burning questions? It looks like we have 1 minute left here.
Is it realistic at all to double major while going into environmental engineering?
Vicki?
Not really. Between the co-op rotations and the course requirements, it's not easy to do a dual major with UC. It doubles your general education requirements sometimes, and a lot of times the overlap just isn't really there. Generally, what I kind of talk to students about who are interested in maybe 2 different areas is minors definitely is a good option to get some more experience, using your co-op semesters to get some experience in different areas as well. You have, usually 5, sometimes 4. It just kind of depends on where you are when you enter our programs. And then also master's degrees can be really good options to get that other degree that you're looking for. I did have a student recently that we were looking at everything, and Basically, it was going to be skipping a co-op semester and about 23 credit hours every single semester in order to do two fairly related programs. So she has since decided maybe just do a minor, and then if that's the direction she feels like she wants to go in her full-time career, getting a master's degree in that other area, if that's something that would be required. If, you know, a different degree other than just environmental engineering would cover what she would need to do. So it is really hard in engineering to do double majors, unfortunately, but we do have other ways to make sure you can get that experience. And a lot of times it's how you market what you've done to get different positions as well, and not necessarily always exactly what that degree is. Good question.
Okay, it looks like our time is up. I thank everybody for attending, and hopefully we'll see you in the halls on main campus here shortly.
Hopefully we're all back on main campus soon in the halls. Yes, thank you. And definitely follow up if you guys have any more questions after today as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.